Well, the No Child Left Behind Act tried to focus on measuring student progress across the time in school. Tried to set certain benchmarks so we could take assessment at various points along a student's time in school and see if he was making adequate performance towards ultimately graduating. Well, the idea of measuring student progress is important for everyone, including children with autism and other severe disabilities. The problem has been that trying to set up the benchmarks as a typical child would go through them in terms of trying to set exact points at third grade or sixth grade or something along those lines does not usually reflect the type of atypical progress that many of the students with disabilities are showing. So while measurement is very important, trying to specify exactly how much progress a student should make at a certain age becomes very difficult with children who have more severe disabilities. A number of years ago, before this law was enacted, we tried to focus on making sure students made significant progress across the age ranges. So for children who were under 5 years of age when they came into the program, one benchmark was to see how many children could attend first grade or second grade with their peers without assistance. On the other end of school, you're trying to take a look at how many students who stay within the program when they graduate from high school have jobs in the community. By focusing on these major goals, we were able to highly individualize the assessment process across the years. Well, the downside of trying to specify certain benchmarks at certain times is that children with severe disabilities often show a pattern which is atypical in terms of their rate of progress. So trying to specify exactly what a child should know when he's 10 years old or 14 years old becomes very difficult. By trying to use state standards and impose the same standards for children with severe disabilities as states are imposing on typically developing children, there becomes a mismatch. That is, we're trying to measure things in a unified way, which become very difficult and are actually against the entire idea of an individualized educational plan. Well, we think the most appropriate goals are set by looking at the big picture. What are we trying to do by sending all children to school? We're trying to give them the skills so they can get a job in the real world and so they can live away from home. I would also suggest we'd like those children to be happy, but that becomes much more difficult to measure. So when we teach children fundamental skills such as reading, math skills, other types of what we view as academic skills, we must make sure they're contributing to a child's ability to get a job, get a better job, and to live more independently. If it doesn't help achieve those goals, then we would question why would we want to focus on those activities. To focus on it simply to say a child has achieved a certain level at a second grade or third grade reading level without linking it to a functional outcome really undermines the type of educational focus we want to have for each child. The problem with the current law is that it seems to set the same type of assessment for every single child. And this is where we think teachers become stymied. They're not quite sure how to blend a functional approach with the very narrowly defined assessment goals that the current law seems to be supporting. Well, when it comes to reading, we would want to make sure that a child can use reading to help him perform better at a job. Can he follow instructions? Can he follow a more detailed menu about materials that he needs or the steps in a task that he's supposed to perform? Can reading and math skills help him go shopping in the community and be more independent? We want to link those academic goals with functional outcomes in the real world. We also want to make sure that children can use these skills not only at school, but at home and in the community. So community-based instruction becomes a part of everyone's education, not just for those who are in a transition stage when they're 16 years old. There's a lot of research that shows that the more time students spend in the community under instructional guidance, the more likely they are to keep their jobs in the real world. Since now is a time when everybody is reconsidering the reenactment of this law, now's the time to think about, has the goal of setting up strong assessment criteria at a number of ages and stages across the school, is that the best way to plan for the long term for students with severe disabilities? I think what we have seen is that there are a lot of teachers, a lot of parents that become very frustrated with feeling that a state is imposing what they must be teaching on a day-to-day basis, instead of keeping in mind, why are we teaching these skills on a daily basis? Well, it's in order to achieve a long-term goal. And the long-term goal is far down the road. Schools are a time-limited resource. We only have so much time and money for students to be in school. At the end of that educational period, there is substantially less funding available. So if a student hasn't been prepared to get a job in the real world, quite frankly, the track record of adult services is less than stellar to find new jobs in the community. What I've seen over the years is that the best outcomes are achieved when a job is found, social skills and communication skills are taught that allow a student to get a job and keep a job in the community.